The story of Naomi and Ruth. We begin the story with Naomi and her family leaving Israel due to a terrible lack of food. They travel to Moab and settle there. Her two sons grow up and marry. But then tragedy strikes as Naomi's husband dies, followed by both her sons. This leaves Naomi and her daughters-in-law as widows. To add to her grief, there is no benefit system in Moab which will provide for her and the young women. At the same time, she hears that there's now plenty of food back in Israel. She decides to return to her homeland. After all, she probably still owns a house and property back there. Her two daughters-in-law decide to go with her. They must love her quite a lot to leave their homeland and their relatives. On the way, Naomi realizes that the two women would probably be much better off staying where they are. They are both young. They could easily marry again. Naomi has nothing to offer them. At first they are reluctant to go, but one of them changes her mind and says goodbye to her mother-in-law. The other one, Ruth, absolutely refuses to leave Naomi. She loves her very much. Come what may, she will stay with her. In addition, Ruth wants Naomi's God to be her God. She knows he is the one true God. It would seem she is trusting him with her future. They arrive back in Israel. People recognize Naomi even after all this time, but she refuses to be called by her real name. Call me Mara, because the Lord has made my life very bitter. Mara means bitter. Little does Naomi know that the Lord is looking after her all the time and is going to do great things for her. Now there was a benefit system in place in Israel that God had instituted by law, and it was this. If a woman should become a widow, it was up to her nearest relatives to look after her and provide for her. No widow should be left penniless and helpless. At this point in the story, we hear that Naomi has a close relative by the name of Boaz. And as it happens, he's a rich and important man, and a good man who loves the Lord. Now that Naomi and Ruth have settled back in Israel, Ruth tells her mother-in-law that she is going to go out into the fields to glean. It's harvest time. Workers will be in the fields gathering in the crops. God provided for widows and orphans with another law, that the harvesters shouldn't be too careful to collect all the crops. If any stalks dropped out of their baskets or they left them on the ground, they were to leave them for needy people to pick up. And this is what's called gleaning. As God would have it, Ruth ends up gleaning in a field belonging to Boaz. Boaz comes along and notices Ruth. He asks his workers who she is, and when he finds out, he knows about her, that she is kind and has come to Israel to help look after her mother-in-law. Boaz is as kind as Ruth. He tells his workers to leave plenty of stalks behind for her to gather. He invites her to share his lunch, and at the end of the day, he gives her a load of grains to take home so Naomi can have food too. We can see from this story how God provides in his kindness and goodness. What we haven't seen yet is how God is planning to turn all the grief and sadness into much, much good. Ruth and Naomi have no idea what an important part they are going to play in God's great plan to bring a Saviour into the world. Thank God for his Son, our Saviour.